before we dive into this story, can I just be real with you for a moment? I see so many people watching these videos, thousands of views, but barely any subscribers. And it honestly hurts. One person, you know who me, spends hours crafting every word, voicing every scene, building a world you can escape into. All I ask in return is something that takes literally no money in less than 3 seconds. Subscribe. It's 100% free. Just one small click that shows you support the time, the effort, and the stories you enjoy. If you're someone who's been listening without subscribing, ask yourself, why? If you enjoy what I do, then let me hear you. Click subscribe, drop a like, or leave a comment. And while you're at it, tell me, are you enjoying the story so far? Do you like the pacing? Got a favorite character? Want me to explain your favorite novel next? I read every single comment, and I care what you think. Now, if you want to fully enjoy the experience, close your eyes. Let your imagination draw the divine world, where karma burns, stars fall, and immortals rise from ashes. I am the eternal star ancestor. Let's begin. What has happened? Did I transmigrate? Qin Yuan muttered, bewildered. Moments ago, he'd been arguing online, your typical digital debate warrior. But then, darkness swallowed everything. Suddenly, it felt like his entire being was flung across space at an impossible speed. The sensation was beyond words. When he finally regained awareness, he found himself in a small, dimly lit room. Strangely, despite the lack of light, his vision remained clear. Hold on. His hand touched his chest, and a terrifying force stirred within. An immeasurable energy that seemed capable of reshaping the land and parting the skies. Just then, a bell-like tone rang inside his mind. A gentle female voice echoed, and a virtual screen materialized before his eyes. Ding. Karma points. 0. Name. Qin Yuan. Title. Eternal Star Ancestor. Position. Supreme Ancestor of the Eternal Star Clan. Cultivation level. 10th stage, Saint Ancestor. Charm level, 10,000. Remaining lifespan, 30 days. Merit law, Eternal Star. Technique, Eternal Star Calamity. Eternal Starlight. Eternal Star Army. Artifact, Eternal Star Staff. Missions will help you earn karma and charm points. Karma points can be used for purchases, extensions, or memories. Example, 100 karma equals 1 week of life. 5 karma equals 1 memory shard. You may ask questions. I am your system. You can talk. Qin Yuan asked in surprise. Affirmative. And who exactly are you? I have no name. You may refer to me simply as System. All right. He scratched his head awkwardly, then asked, so, who am I here? Where exactly is this? Wait, I don't even have karma points. This initial query can be deducted later. Are you suggesting I take a loan? Confirmed. Proceed. Sure. Qin Yuan chuckled wryly. Ding. Karma points, -10. Suddenly, foreign memories flooded his mind. This was the divine world, a vast realm of countless continents, teeming with all kinds of races, dragons, phoenixes, elves, and even the mysterious god and devil clans. Cultivation here followed a strict hierarchy. Hot-Eon, Xianxia, core formation, nascent soul, sage, sovereign, and transcendent, each with 10 stages. Above these was the Paragon realm, and beyond that lay 2 diverging paths, the Heaven's path to become a divine emperor, and the Saint path to become a Saint Ancestor. The former demanded a near-impossible challenge, stealing divinity from the heavens. The latter, while slower, was more achievable through focused cultivation and merging of saint fruits. Qin Yuan had already reached the 10th stage Saint Ancestor, the absolute peak of the saint path, something only 15 people in history had ever achieved. These individuals were known as eternal saint ancestors, revered even by divine emperors. Yet, despite his overwhelming power, the body's former owner faced a crisis. 30,000 years ago, a fierce battle caused a spiritual wound that drastically drained his lifespan. Only 30 days remained. Though his body was sealed in the longevity coffin to slow time, He could only project a weakened spiritual form outside. There were solutions, but they were either extremely difficult or involved risky methods. One such solution involved receiving the supreme source of life from the goddess of life herself. But even with Qin Yuan's legendary status and flawless appearance, not even she had once smiled at him. No one ever had. Well, better this than starting from scratch. But how do I use this power, he muttered. That information costs 5 karma points. Fine. Ding. Karma points, -15. A wave of knowledge surged into his mind. He now knew how to activate his spiritual energy. His strength, although currently limited to his spirit form, was just beneath omnipotent. Even though he had lived for tens of thousands of years, his appearance remained youthful, around 25, with long white hair, a chiseled face, and sharp golden eyes that radiated majesty. He opened his heavenly eyes. The scene outside the longevity coffin became visible. It was a vast underground chamber brimming with spiritual energy. Sitting beside the coffin was a young man with long hair and glowing golden eyes, Qin Jian, a rising star of the Eternal Star Clan. A quick scan from the system at the cost of more karma points revealed that Qin Jian was a 5th-stage divine emperor, the clan's most promising figure. Ding! Karma points, -20. The Eternal Star Clan had 4 divine emperors and 30 saint ancestors, although most of the latter were still in the early stages. A mission prompt suddenly appeared. Assist Qin Jian in his 6th divinity breakthrough. Reward: 1,000 karma points, 500 charm points. Qin Yuan's eyes lit up. His spiritual form emerged beside Qin Jian, startling the latter. Ancestor, Jian, Qin Yuan said calmly, adjusting his voice to sound wise. Your foundation is stable. It's time to attempt the 6th divinity. I'll protect you. The youth was stunned but nodded. After giving instructions, Qin Yuan left the chamber. He arrived in the Thousand Stars continent, a vast land where the sky was always dark and starry. Never a drop of rain, only celestial light. In the heart of the continent stood a city that radiated grandeur, its streets connecting to a palace with 10,000 foundations. Citizens bowed in reverence as they passed. As Qin Yuan admired the city, a haughty voice echoed in the distance. Though not audible to ordinary ears, he picked up the source instantly. It was a challenge. He looked toward the plains outside the city and saw a young woman, 18, in a flowing white robe, with sharp features and commanding presence, standing amid a field of defeated opponents. Nearby lay 100 youths, groaning from defeat, though not seriously harmed. An elder stepped forward and scolded her, but she met his gaze without flinching. If they couldn't withstand one strike from me, they have no right to speak of arrogance. Anger filled the air, but before it escalated further, a voice more powerful than thunder echoed across the continent. Do you not know who this clan's ancestor is? Everyone looked up. Qin Yuan appeared in the sky like a celestial being. The stars gleamed brighter, and awe swept through the crowd. Ancestor, gasped the old elder, dropping to his knees in reverence. The crowd followed, overwhelmed by emotion and reverence. Rumors had long claimed their ancestor had passed into decline. Yet here he stood. Qin Yuan blinked awkwardly. Just moments ago, he had been typing online. Now he was being worshipped by thousands. But he had a clear mission. Teach the arrogant challenger a lesson. Reward: 100 karma, 50 charm. For Qin Yuan, that reward meant an extra week of life. And a simple lesson? That was something he could absolutely deliver. Qin Yuan's sudden appearance had everyone expecting the young woman to retreat, or, at the very least, show some respect. After all, in his memories, even the proudest cultivators had bowed their heads in his presence, lest their elders discipline them harshly afterward. But this young woman didn't even flinch. Instead, she let out a light snort and coldly declared, just a spiritual projection? You dare face me in such a state? Let me refine my sword Dao by confronting you. Qin Yuan. The onlookers. Before anyone could react further, she vanished, appearing 10 meters in front of Qin Yuan in a single step. The sword in her grasp gleamed with radiant energy, and as she raised it, Every sword in the surrounding city began to resonate. Even though her weapon wasn't forged from divine or saint materials, it still commanded immense reverence. Gasps spread through the crowd. That's the supreme, innate sword. To everyone's shock, she had hidden the sword's power earlier, only now revealing it in full. Standing across from her, Qin Yuan felt the world shift. Everything in his sight, her figure, the space around her, was transformed into endless blades. Each one pulsed with overwhelming force, as if the mere illusion of her sword Dao could tear apart reality. In his true form, such power would be less than a whisper. But now, with only a weakened spirit projection at his disposal, he was at a dangerous disadvantage. Just then, a calm and refined voice echoed through the sky. Is the supreme innate sword truly superior to my star sword? Golden radiance burst forth from the palace, casting light across the skies and commanding reverence from all who saw it. Simultaneously, the stars above transformed into sword-shaped silhouettes, pointing toward the young woman like celestial warnings. It's the Star Sword Emperor. Everyone turned toward the palace in awe. He was one of the most prominent figures of the era, known throughout the divine world for having defended the Eternal Star clan from countless challengers during his rise. Now, as a true divine emperor, his presence alone shifted the balance of the heavens. Under his divine pressure, the young woman's calm finally cracked. She tensed, clearly struggling against the immense force that came not from projection, but from a fully realized divine cultivation body. Suddenly, two elders emerged behind her, each radiating sacred brilliance. Behind them floated hundreds of glowing fruits, saint fruits, more than 60 of which were intertwined by a single root, amplifying their brilliance thousands of times over. The skies pulsed with energy. Night faded into day. Gasps rippled across the crowd. They're the twin swords of the Holy Sword sect. Those were the right and left hands of the Holy Sword Emperor before he ascended. So this woman is from their sect. That explains her boldness. The two old men approached and offered a formal salute to Qin Yuan. However, their expressions remained indifferent. Eternal Star Venerable, one said, we respectfully request that our young miss be allowed to refine her sword Dao through a brief exchange with your spiritual projection. Qin Yuan furrowed his brows. Their tone wasn't apologetic. It was as if they had pre-planned this confrontation. Suddenly, the second elder slashed the air with his sword. A rift formed in the sky, creating a barrier that blocked the star-forged blades summoned by the Star Sword Emperor. This is your chance, young miss. Your sword Dao will reach a new level after this, the old man urged. The woman nodded solemnly, then lifted her sword. For the sake of my path, witness my blade, she called out. Qin Yuan widened his eyes. Everything moved in an instant. Her sword swept through his spiritual form, and the projection shattered into fragments of light. The two elders immediately stepped forward, one taking the young woman's hand. Then, like streaks of lightning, they disappeared westward. Moments later, an uproar shook the entire continent. Jianyang, Jianming, are you seeking destruction? From every direction, powerful voices erupted, their fury shaking the heavens. Bursts of spiritual energy erupted in succession like thunderclaps. From within the palace, a blazing golden figure soared into the sky. His killing intent was unmistakable. Boom! 5 golden swords, each marked with a star, floated behind him. These were not ordinary weapons. They were divinities, manifestations of his Tao. A sword bearing the mark of the stars? No one doubted who this was. The Star Sword Emperor. He's finally acting personally. Inside his sealed coffin, Qin Yuan's expression darkened. She really humiliated me, he muttered. It reminded him of all those cultivation stories where ancient powerhouses would emerge grandly, only to be promptly outshined by some rising genius. He was that ancient powerhouse, and this was not how he intended his return to go. Ding! New mission. Take revenge. Reward. 400 karma points. A fire lit in Qin Yuan's eyes. Excellent. Bang! With a single motion, he kicked open the coffin lid. The moment his body broke free from the seal, the spiritual aura blanketing the Thousand Stars continent multiplied tenfold. From above, countless stars descended like falling meteors, illuminating the land in radiant brilliance. It was a spectacle never before witnessed, a sign that the eternal star Ancestor had returned in full force. The phenomenon wasn't limited to the Thousand Stars continent. It surged across neighboring regions inhabited by other star clans. "What's going on?" asked many weaker cultivators, their hearts filled with awe and confusion. Meanwhile, ancient experts who had lived through eras paused in solemn silence. "That's a presence strong enough to suppress even the divinities of emperors," one elder murmured gravely. A few saint ancestors who had initially planned to pursue Jianyang and Jianming suddenly stopped, sensing the shift in cosmic balance. Meanwhile, the two elders had already left the Thousand Stars continent. They soared across space, bending time with every step, traversing vast distances effortlessly. Yet even then, Qin Jian continued to pursue them relentlessly. The five divinities behind him glowed with heavenly radiance, casting beams of golden light across every continent they passed. Suddenly, thousands of celestial swords appeared in the sky. They rained down toward the fleeing elders like a divine storm. Though Jianyang and Jianming were both sixth-stage saint ancestors, they dared not act carelessly. The divine emperor's power was not just fierce, it was elegant, layered, and terrifying in scope. Divine emperors were not just powerful. They were born of extraordinary talent, and their divinities often surpassed the might of even high-stage saint ancestors. Of course, there existed saint ancestors whose comprehension and cultivation rivaled the very best among emperors. Jianming flew higher into the sky, turning midair. Two radiant swords manifested in his hands, glowing with sacred light. "Young emperor," he said, "don't be too confident." He slashed his swords across the sky. The heavens split apart like a curtain of silk, and Qin Jian's celestial swords were swallowed into the rupture. "Haha, you'll need more than that to catch us," the old man laughed, clearly pleased with himself. Qin Jian's brows tightened. It was true. Catching a fleeing opponent often proved harder than defeating one in a duel. He inhaled, and the golden sword in his hand began to resonate. One of his divinities dissolved into light, flowing into the blade. A massive golden star suddenly materialized above, pulsing with a divine presence that burned like the sun and sent shadows fleeing. Upon seeing it, the expressions of Jianming and Jianyang turned solemn. "A supreme emperor technique," one of them muttered. Though not technically a technique, it was a manifestation unique to divine emperors, channeling a divinity directly into an attack. The result was a power several times stronger than any standard move. Of course, there were consequences. The divinity used would take time and effort to restore. During that time, the user's strength would be partially diminished. Yet Qin Jian didn't hesitate for even a moment. As a rising divine emperor, if he failed to defend the honor of the eternal star ancestor, it would become a stain on his name, a tale whispered mockingly in every corner of the cultivation world. Just as his power surged, a calm but arrogant voice echoed from the sky. "That's enough, Qin Jian. Back down now, or you'll regret it later." A new figure descended from the clouds. A young man with long golden hair, dressed in flowing white robes, appeared like a sovereign from legend. On his forehead shimmered the faint mark of a divine symbol, the word God. As if an ancient, I rested there, observing the hidden truths of the world. Boom! 6 golden lotuses bloomed around him. Each hovered with grace, spinning slowly as if channeling celestial blessings. Gasps filled the air. "An emperor from the God clan. Why is he here?" Qin Jian's gaze turned frigid. "Shinjin," he growled, "why are you here?" "Ha ha, don't be so tense," Shinjin replied, waving a hand nonchalantly. "Just passing through. But since you're asking, that girl you were chasing? She's the granddaughter of the Holy Sword Emperor. And he happens to be, well, half of my teacher." He smiled knowingly. So naturally, I have to look after her. As he raised his hand, a soft rain of lotus petals began to fall from the sky. They didn't cause physical destruction, but the pressure they radiated was overwhelming, pressing even the distant Paragon cultivators to their knees. Qin Jian narrowed his eyes. Shen Jin, are you sure you want to get involved in this? Shen Jin laughed again. Why not? What's there to be afraid of? He raised an eyebrow and added, mockingly, well, I would be shaking in fear if the Eternal Star Venerable himself showed up. A pause. Then, an ancient voice answered from far, far away. A voice not spoken through wind or sound, but one that resonated through the heavens. Is that so? Then why haven't you knelt already? Silence felt like a weight. The voice was ethereal, yet immeasurably profound. Just hearing it made countless hearts stutter. Suddenly, starlight gathered from across the skies, forming a gigantic face in the clouds. The sheer size of it eclipsed the sun, casting a cosmic shadow across the lands. Though indistinct, its gaze was overwhelming. Just looking into those celestial eyes made people tremble. Some nearly fainted on the spot. Boom! The falling lotus rain instantly evaporated into golden dust. Even Shen Jin's 6 golden lotuses wavered in panic. Without hesitation, he pulled them back into his body. At the same time, the radiant saint fruits surrounding Jianyang and Jianming began to flicker. All 3 cultivators froze midair, stunned and breathless. For they now knew the Eternal Star Ancestor had fully awakened, and he was watching. Jian Yixue, proud and defiant just moments ago, now stood frozen, unable to move freely under the pressure descending from the heavens. Her body trembled, a thin layer of sweat glistening on her forehead. Yet, even in this state, she held her head high, refusing to kneel. Her pride remained unshaken, if only in appearance. Whoosh! A colossal palm materialized in the sky, composed entirely of starlight and divine energy. It hovered above Jian Yixue, Jianyang, Jianming, and Shenjin. The 2 elders, Jianyang and Jianming, could no longer resist. The sheer pressure suppressed their abilities entirely. As for Shenjin, although he could still move, he had already sensed the immense power flowing toward them. Fighting back would only escalate the situation and invite disaster. Compared to an eternal saint ancestor, even someone with 6 or 7 divinities like him was still too far behind. It was said that at least 8 divinities were required just to withstand such power, let alone contest it. And yet, Qin Yuan hadn't even moved from his throne in the Eternal Star Palace. Seated with serene majesty, he gazed westward, eyes glowing with cosmic energy. The distance between the Thousand Stars continent and the site of the conflict meant nothing to him. For others, it was thousands of miles, perhaps unreachable without days of flight. But for Qin Yuan, it was simply a few steps away. Rather than going himself, he simply extended a fraction of his power. Boom! The heavenly palm, formed of star essence and condensed will, swept down in a wide arc. It didn't seek to end lives, merely to punish. In a sweeping motion, it sent the 4 cultivators plummeting downward. The sea split under the force, revealing the land beneath, and their figures struck the exposed terrain like meteors. The radiant glow of their auras dimmed drastically. Where moments ago they stood with imposing grace, they now lay unconscious, robes torn, spiritual energy in disarray. Rather than going himself, he simply extended a fraction of his power. Boom! The heavenly palm, formed of star essence and condensed will, swept down in a wide arc. It didn't seek to end lives, merely to punish. In a sweeping motion, it sent the 4 cultivators plummeting downward. The sea split under the force, revealing the land beneath, and their figures struck the exposed terrain like meteors. The radiant glow of their auras dimmed drastically. Where moments ago they stood with imposing grace, they now lay unconscious, robes torn, spiritual energy in disarray. Had Qin Yuan willed it, he could have erased them entirely. But this wasn't about vengeance through destruction. It was a warning and a declaration. Ding! You successfully taught Xianxia a lesson. Plus 100 karma points, plus 50 charm points. You completed your revenge. Plus 400 karma points. Debt repayment. Minus 20 karma points. Current karma points, 480. Current charm, 10,050. System, Qin Yuan said calmly. Open the background files of the Holy Sword sect and the God clan. Ding! Request accepted. Minus 10 karma points. Current karma points, 470. Qin Yuan studied the details in silence. The Holy Sword sect, it turned out, was founded by the legendary Holy Sword Emperor, a man who wielded 9 divinities. Not only was his strength unmatched in direct combat, but his reputation was etched in legend for another reason. He had crossed blades with eternal saint ancestors multiple times and returned alive. Even more astounding, he hailed from a lower realm. By the time he arrived in the divine world, he was already a transcendent, while most others began at the sage level. He had challenged countless elites, even offended prominent families, and never hesitated, regardless of beauty or status. To him, the Tao of the sword reigned supreme. This had earned him many enemies. Yet, none dared move against him openly, because he had the backing of another eternal saint ancestor. But one incident had crossed the line. He injured a woman whose father was more than just another cultivator. That father was Qin Yuan. The daughter he had lost, a pain buried deep, had once stood as the pride of his clan. Since then, enmity between Qin Yuan and the Holy Sword Emperor had simmered in the background of the cultivation world, never forgotten. Well, Qin Yuan muttered, lips curled in a wry smile. The higher you stand, the more storms you endure. No one ascends without enemies. His expression turned more solemn as he reviewed the data on the God clan. They weren't just powerful. They were the apex lineage. 2 great emperors, each holding 10 divinities, stood at their peak, one of whom was none other than the goddess of life. And as if that wasn't enough, they also possessed their own eternal saint ancestor. Even the most daring powers of the divine world treaded carefully around them. Best not to provoke them, at least not yet, Qin Yuan murmured. He waved his hand. The unconscious figures of Xianxia, Jianyang, and Jianming were pulled from the distant battlefield directly into his palace, landing with soft thuds before the throne. As for Xinjin, he was left untouched where he lay. Even now, it was clear his involvement had been half-hearted, perhaps just a show of loyalty. In the next moment, figures began to appear around the grand hall. One after another, powerful cultivators arrived. Each possessed the aura of a saint ancestor, none weaker than the 6th stage. Only those of sufficient standing were allowed to stand before Qin Yuan. In the Eternal Star clan, this meant 5 6th stage saint ancestors, 2 7th stage saint ancestors, 1 8th stage saint ancestor. None, however, had reached the 9th stage yet. Soon after them, Qin Jian stepped forward with a deep bow. He was still the youngest, despite his immense power. He wasn't alone. Beside him stood a well-built man with a commanding presence, his aura unmistakable. Qin Lei, Qin Yuan whispered to himself. A 7th stage divine emperor. Qin Lei stood as one of the clan's cornerstones. But before Qin Yuan could greet them, a soft, melodic voice echoed through the palace. Husband, you finally decided to show yourself? It was light and playful, yet held a power that made even seasoned elders pause. Qin Yuan's spine straightened. That voice, it carried no hostility, but it swept into the heart like ripples across a tranquil lake. Even Qin Yuan, accustomed to facing divine emperors without blinking, couldn't help the slight shiver that ran down his back. He looked around slowly. Among the many women who had been part of his life, most were long gone. Some had passed away. Others had secluded themselves in remote lands. But one still remained, and she had just arrived that a woman with a striking presence entered the grand hall. She appeared to be in her late 20s, standing tall with elegance and confidence. Her crimson-red hair flowed in soft waves down her back, and her eyes shimmered with a mysterious pink hue. She wore a short black robe with silver embroidery and moved with the grace of a dancer. Every step she took seemed to resonate with subtle enchantment, and the air around her shimmered with warmth. Qin Yuan looked at her in stunned silence. He had always believed that cultivators exaggerated the beauty of women in their stories. But now, standing before this captivating woman, he realized how wrong he was. This was no illusion. Her charm could start wars. It could sway the will of emperors. She wasn't from the Eternal Star clan. She was a member of the legendary nine-tailed fox race, renowned not only for their mystical abilities, but also for their natural charisma, an allure that could rival the strongest soul arts. Ignoring the gazes of the gathered saint ancestors and divine emperors, she walked straight to the throne where Qin Yuan sat. Still unsure how to handle the situation, Qin Yuan pondered how to address her. Should he act as though they were close? Was this a relationship he was meant to resume? But before he could decide, she sat beside him, rather on him, gently resting on his lap as if it were the most natural thing in the world. A wave of warmth surged through him. He instinctively wrapped his arms around her waist to keep her from slipping, trying not to show how flustered he was inside. "Su Mei," he said, her name surfacing from the depths of the body's memory. She gently cupped his face and leaned in, her voice soft as morning breeze. "Husband, have you resolved your life force issue?" Her breath carried a floral scent, refreshing and sweet, like citrus kissed by sunlight. Around them, the atmosphere shifted. The male saint ancestors respectfully averted their gazes, while the few female ones displayed barely concealed irritation. Su Mei wasn't a member of the Eternal Star clan, but her presence was impossible to ignore. Qin Yuan cleared his throat and lightly patted her waist. "Let me explain everything," he said. He looked out over the many powerful figures gathered in the hall. Saint ancestors, divine emperors, and younger elites like Qin Jian and Qin Lei. These were the pillars of the Eternal Star clan. "You all must have questions," Qin Yuan began calmly. "To be brief, I can now emerge freely. Soon, I will personally assist Qin Jian in breaking through to his sixth divinity." A middle-aged cultivator in a jade green robe, Qin Mu, a seventh-stage saint ancestor and Qin Yuan's younger cousin, stepped forward in surprise. "You really mean it, brother?" His voice wavered. He had once relied heavily on Qin Yuan's reputation and was one of the most concerned about his decline. Qin Yuan nodded slightly. "I also heard a few of our territories have been seized. Make sure you reclaim them." "Yes. Right away, brother." Qin Mu responded quickly, lowering his head. A deep voice echoed next. Qin Hu, an eighth-stage saint ancestor. He was older than Qin Yuan and had once mentored him in his youth. "Yuan, whatever method you've used to regain your strength, it brings us great hope. But I suggest you move with caution. It's not yet time to shake the heavens." Qin Yuan offered a respectful nod. "I understand, Uncle Hu. I won't act recklessly. For beings at their level, confronting great emperors or eternal saint ancestors was what people called acting flashy. Everything else, no matter how grand, was considered minor." Talk then turned toward the fallen enemies. Qin Yuan gestured toward the unconscious Jian trio. "Detain them. If the Holy Sword Emperor wishes for their return, he must offer compensation worthy of this transgression." "I'll handle it, brother," said Qin Mu. With practiced ease, he sealed their forms and stored them within his spatial treasure. Just then, Su Mei's voice rang through the hall, playful yet commanding. "Well, now that everyone knows my husband is doing well, perhaps you can give us a moment alone?" Despite not being of the Eternal Star clan, Su Mei's status was such that even saint ancestors and divine emperors didn't dare object. They left one by one, leaving only the two of them behind. As the doors closed and silence returned, Su Mei turned her gaze to Qin Yuan again. "Are you really fine now?" she asked softly. He nodded with a faint smile. "Umph, you better not be lying," she muttered, leaning forward slightly, her forehead almost touching his. "You have no idea how worried I've been all these years." She studied him closely, then added with narrowed eyes, "You seem even more charming than before." I can feel it. Without warning, she leaned in and kissed him gently. Her robes brushed against his chest, and her presence seemed to envelop him completely. Qin Yuan froze. 3 overwhelming sensations hit him at once, and he knew he wasn't ready for any of them. I need to get out of here now. With a single motion, he vanished by tearing open the space in front of him. Sume blinked as she fell back onto the throne. "Yeah," she muttered in surprise, staring at the empty air where he had sat just seconds ago. Qin Yuan reappeared in a distant desert. He hadn't intended to go there specifically. It was simply the first space tear his instincts guided him through. This was the southern desert region of the divine world, vast and dry, but saturated with spiritual energy that shimmered in the hot air. This region bordered the human continent, one of the largest territories in the divine world, inhabited predominantly by the human race. As he stood under the blistering sky, he remained quiet. He wasn't here to explore. He had come to clear his mind and to track down a familiar presence. 2 auras flickered across the edge of his divine sense. They were faint but unmistakable. One belonged to his daughter, the other to his disciple. Both were divine emperors of the Eternal Star clan, and both were long absent from the clan's palace, wandering the vast divine world for their own journeys. Most of the time, they only returned by projecting their spiritual bodies. Now, it seemed they were on their way to him. Qin Yuan took a deep breath and gazed into the horizon. There was still much to uncover. In the heart of a bustling desert city, Qin Yuan quietly entered a rooftop restaurant renowned for its spiritual dishes drawn from desert beasts and rare herbs. He chose a corner table, one facing the city's central palace, and sat down, his aura fully concealed. To onlookers, he was just a handsome traveler, yet somehow impossible to ignore. While waiting, Qin Yuan spoke internally. "System, that woman Su Mei, can she truly be called my wife? I know what you're thinking, but there's no need for confusion. You are the Eternal Star Ancestor now. Everything here belongs to you." Qin Yuan blinked. "You mean, I'm not just a successor or possessor, but him? You can consider yourself the Eternal Star Ancestor, though without your past memories. In one sense, it's like you were reborn directly into this existence." He paused, feeling the immense spiritual power within himself. Power that could level continents, silence oceans, and shift celestial bodies. How could such strength be taken over by any ordinary soul? Yes, it does make more sense that I am him, reborn, perhaps, or awakened after slumber. That's a valid interpretation. Though I can't confirm it absolutely, it's consistent with what I observe. Qin Yuan narrowed his eyes. "Wait, you mean you don't know? I am a system designed to assist you. My access is limited to what you uncover or awaken on your own. I have no omniscient view." That's frustratingly honest, till he smiled. "Well, I'm not upset. I like this life more than my last. The mystery can wait." Just then, a soft voice interrupted his thoughts. A maid arrived with a friendly smile and a small notepad in hand. She was part beastskin, with short stature, fluffy rabbit ears, and a twitching tail, which made her charming in a gentle, harmless way. "What would you like to order, sir?" Qin Yuan scanned the menu briefly, but the choices were too varied to judge. "Bring me everything you'd recommend from the top tier of dishes," he said casually. The maid blinked, surprised at the request. When she hesitated, he pulled out a single St. Jade and handed it to her like it was loose change. Her eyes widened. "Yes, sir, this is far too much." "Then keep the rest," Qin Yuan said calmly, already glancing out the window again. The maid bowed deeply, beaming. "Thank you very much." She walked off, practically skipping. Qin Yuan leaned back and observed the city. Under the floating palace at the center, he could sense the spiritual fluctuations of a saint ancestor, though not a powerful one, likely with fewer than 50 saint fruits. Even so, that level of cultivation was enough to earn respect and authority in a region like this. They all look small from up here, but how many battles and lifetimes did it take for him to earn that spot? Qin Yuan murmured. He never forgot that most beings in the divine world struggle daily just to survive. Even the maid, her cultivation was barely in the sage realm. Suddenly, the sky dimmed. It lasted only an instant, but it sent a tremor through every paragon and ancestor in the city. No thunder followed, no wind, just a sudden, overwhelming shadow that vanished as quickly as it came. Then, two figures appeared in front of Qin Yuan's table without a sound. If Su Mei had been the flame that warmed hearts, these two were the cold starlight of night. Ethereal, distant, untouchable. Both wore long black dresses that reached their ankles, flowing like moonlight on still water. They were tall, each around 177 centimeters, with long hair cascading past their knees. Their dresses, though modest, outlined the grace of their forms. One had snow-white hair and a face that bore a striking resemblance to Qin Yuan, down to the small beauty mark beneath her left eye. Her name was Qin Wuxin, and the world knew her as the goddess of the dark star. The second woman had jet black hair, straight-cut bangs, and small dark wings folded on her back. Behind those bangs, Qin Yuan's heavenly eyes could faintly see the word devil hidden on her forehead. She was Yi Shui, his disciple, born of the Devil clan, but trained entirely within the Eternal Star clan. Though not related by blood, she was regarded as a family member, and her loyalty was unmatched. Her title was the Goddess of Dark Snow. Their personalities were so synchronized, people often refer to them as one, the twin goddess of the night. Their power and coordination in battle were renowned across regions. Even top divine emperors were reluctant to face the two together. Qin Yuan exhaled softly. You both came in person. That's rare. I was worried you'd entered dangerous realms, searching for ways to restore my life force. Qin Wuxin, ever composed, crossed her arms and narrowed her eyes slightly. Father, you're not lying, are you? Her voice, while respectful, held an intimidating coldness. Qin Yuan, caught off guard by the title father coming from someone so awe-inspiring, cleared his throat in a panic. Ahem, let's sit down first. It's rare for us to meet like this in person. That deserves a celebration. Qin Wuxin gave a light nod and sat beside him with poise. Yi Shui followed, her expression calm. Master, she said after a moment, to overcome the decline of life force simply by staying in a coffin, it seems like a miracle. Her dark eyes flicked over him, scrutinizing. Did you experience a breakthrough? The question hung in the air. If he answered carelessly, it could arouse suspicion. But Qin Yuan simply gave a soft smile and remained silent, choosing to let mystery do the talking. Just then, the maid returned with several trays. But when she saw the two elegant women seated beside Qin Yuan, her jaw dropped. Ge goddesses, she whispered, stunned by their otherworldly beauty. Qin Wuxin's gaze flicked toward her, calm but razor-sharp. The maid froze mid-step, her legs trembling. The tray in her hands wobbled. Before it could fall, Qin Yuan moved with a subtle gesture, guiding all the trays onto the table with invisible force. Wuxin, don't frighten the staff, he said gently. This was her well-known habit. Qin Wuxin had little patience for weak cultivators and often grew irritated when approached unnecessarily. Go, Yi Shui added softly but firmly. Her tone was more tempered than Wuxin's, perhaps due to her difficult upbringing, but she, too, wasn't fond of unnecessary interaction. The maid bowed quickly, placed the rest of the dishes, and hurried off. Qin Yuan watched the two women as they picked up their utensils. These two, his daughter and disciple, carried the same calm composure, strength, and loyalty. And now they had returned to his side, both seeking answers. He didn't know yet what storms awaited, but with the twin goddess of the night at his side, he would face them with renewed resolve. Far to the west, beyond the star-drenched skies of the Eternal Star Clan, stretched a land where only one law reigned supreme: the sword. This was the Sword Continent, a vast region where cultivators of every race and background gathered under one condition. They must wield a sword. It mattered not if you were human, beastkin, or dragon-blooded. So long as your Tao walked the path of the blade, you were welcome. Those who didn't, they were exiled without exception. These rules were imposed by the continent's undisputed sovereign, the sword-hearted Great Emperor, a cultivator of unmatched mastery and the wielder of 10 divinities. It was said he could replicate any sword technique in the world with just a single glance. The others chuckled. So, she's a granddaughter after a few thousand generations, the cigar man said, grinning. The bloodlines, all that matters, the Holy Sword Emperor replied with pride. But before he could drink again, his hand paused mid-air. His eyes narrowed. What is it? Asked the monk, suddenly alert. The Holy Sword Emperor's fingers flicked, and a shimmering thread of light shot into each man's forehead. Moments later, all their expressions turned grave. He's awakened. The Eternal Star Ancestor has broken his seal. The air grew heavy. So, muttered the dragon-blooded man, will you go save your generals and your granddaughter? I want to see him first, the Holy Sword Emperor replied, standing tall. His long coat rustled like a drawn blade. Without another word, he stepped east, vanishing into the skies. The others exchanged glances. He's stubborn, the monk muttered. But if he challenges the Eternal Star Ancestor again, we should back him, said the dragon-blooded man. I want to stretch these old bones anyway, the old man chuckled. A duel with an Eternal Saint Ancestor isn't something you get every day. Besides, the dragon-blooded one grinned. The pressure might just help me awaken my 9th bloodline stage. Back at the floating restaurant on the Thousand Stars continent, Qin Yuan was leisurely savoring his meal. The dishes were divine, cooked with rare beast cores and heavenly herbs. He had to admit, this world knew how to treat the palate of a cultivator. Were it not for the two imposing women seated across from him, he might have devoured the entire table in a frenzy. Just then, the rabbit-eared maid quietly left the establishment, her steps brisk and determined. She soon returned with a young boy who looked no older than 13, bearing the same beastkin features, undoubtedly her younger brother. Qin Yuan watched from his seat and listened in. They were planning to leave the city. Their destination, a remote region of the continent where beastkin could live without discrimination. There perhaps they could grow freely without fear or judgment. Qin Yuan's gaze softened. While he could cross continents in a blink, ordinary cultivators like them would take years, if they survived the journey at all. And the cost of travel was no small thing. Quietly, he reached out with a thread of his power, weaving protective spiritual barriers around the two siblings. He could have teleported them instantly, but no, they needed the journey. Struggles sharpened the soul. Father. Qin Wuxin's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Qin Yuan turned to his daughter, sensing something serious in her expression. We've decided, she said, her gaze unwavering. It's time for us to rob the 9th divinity. Qin Yuan blinked. Even Yi Shui nodded in agreement. You're serious? He asked slowly. Yes, said Yi Shui. We've reached the absolute limit of our current cultivation. The next step is impossible without taking this risk. Divine emperors could grow stronger over generations, but to ascend beyond that, to grasp the 9th fragment of divinity, was an entirely different path. Dangerous. Fatal even. Many had perished attempting it. The higher the divinity, the greater the heavens' resistance. Qin Yuan was silent for a moment. Then, finally, he nodded. If that's what you believe in, I'll support you. Ding. Assist your daughter in robbing the 9th divinity. Plus 5,000 karma points, plus 2,500 charm points. Assist your disciple in robbing the 9th divinity. Plus 5,000 karma points, plus 2,500 charm points. He didn't flinch at the notifications. He simply poured himself another cup of wine and drank. Across the table, Qin Wuxin's brow furrowed slightly. Her usual composure cracked, just for a moment, as a flicker of discomfort passed her face. Before she could speak, a melodic voice echoed from the air. Husband, I've been looking everywhere. So you're here, spending time with your daughter and disciple. A figure dressed in a flowing red gown, shimmering like fire, gracefully landed on the rooftop. Sumei. She had changed into more luxurious attire, her aura dazzling yet distinctly playful. Her eyes sparkled as she approached. Qin Wuxin stood immediately. Her gaze turned sharp. What are you doing here? She asked coldly. The atmosphere tensed. It was the timeless clash between daughter and stepmother, and Qin Yuan, for all his power, could only sigh inwardly. Here we go again. Sumei pouted, her soft voice tinged with grievance. "Why can't I come when my husband is here?" Qin Wuxin didn't respond directly. Her silence and cold gaze conveyed enough. She clearly didn't welcome Su Mei's presence. Yishui, ever the mediator, gently held Wuxin's hand. "Sister Wu, let's go," she said softly. Qin Wuxin nodded and stood. Before departing, she looked back at her father. "Father, we're heading to Snowland. I'll contact you later." With that, both women stepped into the sky, vanishing in a flash as they tore through space itself. The skies briefly darkened in their wake. As silence returned, Su Mei immediately slid into Qin Yuan's lap, resting her hands on his chest, her expression a perfect mixture of charm and disappointment. "They still treat me like I don't belong," she murmured, her voice like a wounded melody. Qin Yuan didn't know the cause of the tension between his daughter and Su Mei. It wasn't something he had paid much attention to in the past. For now, he simply patted her waist comfortingly. "Families are always like that," he said with a smile, full of drama. He had begun to accept his identity as the eternal star ancestor. This life came with its responsibilities, but also its joys. Why reject what was already his? "Come on," he added. "Let's go for a walk." Lifting her up with ease, Qin Yuan led Su Mei out of the restaurant. She clung to his side, resting her shoulder on his as they strolled together, his arm wrapped snugly around her waist. They soon left the desert behind, traveling eastward until they reached a secluded forest. In its heart, a crystal-clear lake shimmered under the sun, surrounded by a field of blooming flowers. It was a tranquil paradise, one untouched by the turmoil of the outside world. No cultivators disturbed this place. Even paragons avoided it due to the powerful beasts within. But to Qin Yuan, it was nothing. As they stood beside the lake, Su Mei looked around, visibly satisfied. Her eyes glimmered as she turned to face him. Dressed in a glamorous red gown and standing tall in high heels, she nearly matched his height. Her flawless features, framed by red locks, seemed to glow beneath the forest light. "Husband," she whispered, curling her lips into a soft, playful smile. She wrapped her arms around his neck, closing the distance between them. Qin Yuan met her gaze, but her next words caught him off guard. "Husband, do you think I wouldn't notice? You've changed." He didn't respond immediately. One of Su Mei's hands reached up to caress his face. "I don't care who or what you are now. As long as you remember me, you will always be my husband." Then, without another word, she leaned in. Qin Yuan didn't hesitate. Their lips met in a deep, slow kiss. There was no shyness, no distance, just a warm embrace between two cultivators bound by years of love and longing. Time slowed as their kiss deepened, their bodies pressing closer. Su Mei melted into him, her hands clinging tightly to his robe. The passion between them was raw but sincere, not driven by lust alone, but history, one not even death could erase. Eventually, Qin Yuan broke the kiss, breathing out softly. "You've gotten bolder," Su Mei teased. He chuckled and cleared his throat. "You bring it out of me." As she fixed her dress, Qin Yuan's smile faded slightly. "Let's head back. If the Holy Sword Emperor learns what happened, he might show up." Su Mei nadith. They vanished into the air, reappearing moments later in the skies above the eternal star continent. And they were just in time. A deep boom echoed across the continent. From the western horizon, explosions rippled through the sky. Two figures clashed in midair, their auras shaking the heavens. One was an enormous dragon, its wings spread wide, scales gleaming violet, and 8 mighty limbs trailing behind. Each roar it unleashed birthed an ocean of spiritual water, capable of drowning mountains. Its opponent was shirtless, muscular, and bore a glowing star on his chest. Qin Hu, the powerful divine emperor of the Eternal Star Clan. As they exchanged devastating blows, the land trembled beneath them. "A purple ocean dragon," Qin Yuan muttered, narrowing his eyes. "An 8-stage divine beast. Unlike cultivators, divine beasts like dragons, phoenixes, and 9-tailed foxes advanced not through techniques, but through the evolution of their ancient bloodlines. The power they possessed was terrifying, On the eastern side of the sky, another battle raged. Qinlei wielded a long spear, facing off against a bald monk who sat cross-legged midair, drinking wine. "That's the directionless monk," Qin Yuan murmured. "An 8th-stage Saint Ancestor." Before he could process further, a cold voice boomed through the skies. "Eternal Star, you finally emerged." Qin Yuan looked up as two figures arrived. One was a young man surrounded by 9 golden swords floating silently behind him. Their lack of radiance didn't diminish their pressure. The world itself seemed to bow under their presence. The second figure was an old man. 96 saint fruits orbited around him like a constellation, their light bathing the entire continent in a holy glow. The Holy Sword Emperor and the Smoke Ancestor. Qin Yuan's tone turned icy. "Have you forgotten who I am?" The young emperor scoffed. "You, hiding in a coffin for 30,000 years. Are you even worthy of memory?" Sumei, who stood beside Qin Yuan, could no longer remain silent. She stepped forward, eyes glowing with disdain. "Holy Sword, you're far too arrogant. You think no one among the 9th stage can surpass you." Without another word, her form shimmered and changed. In a brilliant flash of pink light, Su Mei transformed, her true body revealing itself. A majestic 9-tailed fox with shimmering fur and celestial wings now hovered in the sky, her aura washing over the land. Before she could attack, the Smoke Ancestor flew into her path, laughing. "Huh, 9-tailed queen, I'll be your opponent." "Then die," Su Mei growled as her 9 tails lashed forward, each one glowing with destructive energy. Meanwhile, Qin Yuan locked eyes with the Holy Sword Emperor. The latter, despite his bluster, couldn't help but take a step back as twin swords appeared in his hands. "You know," Qin Yuan said calmly, "if you don't turn around and run, you'll be dead within a dozen strikes." The Holy Sword Emperor's expression faltered at Qin Yuan's unshaken confidence. Gritting his teeth, he snapped, "Are you sure you can unleash a dozen full-powered moves?" "Why not?" Qin Yuan replied calmly. "Do I look like an old man with no strength left?" It was true. Activating his full strength might burn away his remaining lifespan. But Qin Yuan no longer cared. With the system backing him and missions offering karma in return, every risk was an opportunity. His eyes flicked to the glowing system panel hovering within his consciousness. New missions available. Wound the Holy Sword Emperor. Plus 500 karma points. Plus 250 charm points. Each additional wound will double the reward, max 10 times. Kill or capture the Holy Sword Emperor. Plus 10,000 karma points. Plus 5,000 charm points. Kill or capture the Purple Ocean Dragon. Plus 2,000 karma points. Plus 1,000 charm points. Kill or capture the Directionless Monk. Plus 2,000 karma points. Plus 1,000 charm points. Kill or capture the Smoke Ancestor. Plus 5,000 karma points. Plus 2,500 charm points. Seeing the grin spreading across Qin Yuan's face, the Holy Sword Emperor misunderstood, assuming he was preparing a trap. He stepped back cautiously. "Eternal Star, we don't have to fight. Return my granddaughter and my generals. We'll settle this peacefully." Qin Yuan let out a laugh, cold and dismissive. "Do you think you're qualified to make demands? All right. You obtained something from the Immortal Ghost Cave, didn't you? Hand it over, and I'll consider returning them." He spoke casually, not even certain of what that treasure was. It was simply a rumor he had heard. But the moment he said it, the Holy Sword Emperor's expression darkened to its limit. "So you're really looking for death, Eternal Star?" His voice was grim. "Then let the world judge whether you're still worthy of fear." In response, the 9 golden swords floating behind him suddenly blazed with divine light. Boom, boom, boom. The sky cracked. The stars vanished. Shockwaves radiated across the Thousand Stars continent, cracking mountains and uprooting clouds. Even Qin Hu and Qin Lei, as well as the Purple Ocean Dragon and Directionless Monk, were forced back by the pressure. Only Su Mei and the Smoke Ancestor remained unmoved in the sky. "He's too strong. Perhaps no one among the 9th stage can match him," the Watchers whispered with awe, Indeed, the Holy Sword Emperor's 9 divinities glowed like celestial pillars. His might was enough to shatter realms. But Qin Yuan merely smirked. Ding! You hurt the Holy Sword Emperor once. Plus 500 karma points, plus 250 charm points. Karma points, 970. Charm points, 10,300. Another notification appeared. You can unlock all your memories with 500 karma points. Qin Yuan paused for a second, tempted but pushed it aside for now. He appeared again in front of the Holy Sword Emperor, prepared to strike once more. But this time, the Emperor dodged, tearing through space-time to escape toward the outer void. Still, Qin Yuan didn't chase him. He turned to look at the others. The purple ocean dragon and the directionless monk both shuddered under his gaze. Holy Sword, now's the time. Do it, the dragon roared, panic in its ancient eyes. The Holy Sword Emperor let out a long breath. Then, with grim determination, his chest glowed. An ancient rune in the shape of a sword emerged. Buzz! His robes tore. The rune vibrated. And across the entire star territory, swords trembled. From mountain peaks, ancient tombs, sect vaults, battlefield ruins, and even the hands of shocked cultivators. Millions of swords tore themselves free and flew toward the sky. My sword! My flying sword! No, not my ancestral blade! Cries of despair echoed from countless places. Even saint ancestors were left empty-handed. This technique, it can summon every sword in the star territory, gasped a cultivator, his voice trembling. Only those who never practiced the sword breathed sighs of relief. Qin Yuan's face hardened. System, he said, voice calm but heavy. Give me info on this technique, and use the rest of my karma to extend my lifespan. Order accepted. 5 karma points used to unlock the technique's information. 965 karma points exchanged for 65 days of lifespan. Karma points, 0. Lifespan remaining. 95 days. Qin Yuan exhaled slowly. He looked west, his voice now barely a whisper, but each syllable traveled through space and time. Sword-hearted great emperor, are you declaring yourself my enemy too? No one else heard those words, but a distant, genderless voice responded, echoing like the hum of a sword striking steel. This is merely a reward for his devotion to the sword Tao. I have no quarrel with you, but if you believe I do, then so be it. Qin Yuan's eyes narrowed. The game had changed. Now, not just emperors, but Tao itself was watching. The sky quaked with tension as the two supreme experts stood face to face. Yet, Qin Yuan's tone remained calm and mocking. Holy Sword, once you release that attack, you will probably run out of energy, and I can catch you. Are you ready for that? The Holy Sword Emperor's eyes narrowed, scoffing. Are you worried? I'm just reminding you. Qin Yuan replied evenly. Even though you're an irreverent man, you're still a genius in the sword Tao. Wouldn't it be a pity if you're captured by me? Capture me? Yeah. Say that again if you're still alive after this. The Holy Sword Emperor sneered. But inwardly, Qin Yuan was laughing. Bang, bang, bang. A sequence of earth-shaking detonations erupted across the sky as the Holy Sword Emperor's chest split open. From within emerged a small, dull sword, so unremarkable it seemed to be made of iron. Yet, the space surrounding it shattered instantly, collapsing under its existence. It was no ordinary technique. The Sword Heart. This was one of the 3 strongest offensive techniques in the entire divine world. Although the Holy Sword Emperor couldn't wield it himself, the sword-hearted Great Emperor had embedded it within him, a desperate, one-time attack. As the tiny sword hovered in the air, time and space bent around it. Everything slowed. Even Qin Yuan's movements dulled under its terrifying aura. The sword was like a streak of divine light, unstoppable and pure. Qin Yuan closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, he summoned the heavens. The starlight above converged, folding together to form a radiant shield before him. Eternal starlight, whispered many from afar. The strongest defensive technique of the eternal star ancestor. Though weakened, it was still terrifying. The stars dimmed, but the eternal star's light stood unshaken. Boom! The sword heart struck his starlight shield. In that moment, the sky emptied, no stars, no light. Continents were torn from their places. It was just a clash of two powers, but for mortals and saints alike, it was the end of the world. Qin Yuan winced at the system's notification. Your lifespan is reduced by 80 days. Age, 15 days before death. 15 days. That's all he had left. But the battle wasn't over. He stepped forward. The Holy Sword Emperor, preparing to cry out for help, found himself face to face with a monster. You, he stammered. Qin Yuan's hand rose. Brat, you've angered this old man. Slap. The force cracked through the air. Teeth flew. Slap. Another. Bone shattered. And again. And again. 9 slaps in total. Each one a humiliation deeper than the last. The once proud divine emperor with 9 divinities was beaten senseless before countless hidden observers. He sealed the Holy Sword Emperor's power and cast him into his artifact space. You injure the Holy Sword Emperor 9 times, plus 4,500 karma, plus 2,250 charm. You successfully capture the Holy Sword Emperor, plus 10,000 karma, plus 5,000 charm. Karma, 14,500 charm, 17,550. Qin Yuan smiled. The points kept rolling in. In the distance, women across the continent sighed. The eternal star Ancestor is so handsome. If only I could be his servant. Qin Yuan blinked and asked, System, are these charm points really that powerful? Current limit is 100,000. You could probably conquer every woman in the divine world. However, at 20,000 charm points, rewards diminish. Only 1/3 of karma points will convert to charm. Ah, he chuckled. Unlocking all memories, minus 500 karma. Karma, 14,000. One woman sat atop the throne, elegant and regal, her light brown hair tied in a silver crown. She had the skin of spring cherry blossoms, a body as graceful as flowing silk, and legs that peeked teasingly from beneath her luxurious gown. She said nothing, her eyes fixed on the screen. At her side, a servant murmured, Ah, Eternal Star Venerable looks even more handsome now. She quickly covered her mouth, realizing who sat next to her. The queen remained silent, but her cheeks reddened slightly. The servant's thoughts raced. Is she missing her husband? Hasn't she said she's tired of him? But even she couldn't deny it now. The Eternal Star Venerable wasn't just victorious. He was reborn. And perhaps the heart she tried to bury was beginning to stir once more. And that's it for today's chapter, folks. Our coffin-waking, system-wielding, face-slapping ancestor just added 3 more big shots to his collection like Pokemon. But seriously, what did you think of this episode? Was the Holy Sword Emperor too cocky? Do you think the ancestor's charm points are secretly breaking the divine world's balance? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one of them. And if you haven't subscribed yet, seriously? We're 10,000 karma points deep, and you're still not part of the sect. Click that subscribe button, ring the bell like a divine treasure, and help this channel cultivate to the next realm. Thanks for watching. And remember, this world may have 10 divinities, but your support is the real heavenly treasure. Catch you in the next breakdown.